Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the House of the Dragon Review Recap. This episode opens with a very empty castle, quiet and almost eerie, haunted even, as one lone boy walks through the castle halls to bring word to the handmaiden of the queen. All of this is very suspicious because it's shared through whispers. As she was informed, she brought herself to the queen immediately and gave her the news. Apparently the boy was relaying that the king has died. To the queen's surprise, she immediately gets up out of bed and starts to get dressed. And the first person she goes to talk to is her father, the hand of the king. Now, Allison is holding true to the last words of the king right before he left. He told her on his dying wish to Aegon to be king because he only wanted his true-born son to be king and to succeed him. But the problem was that at the time he just had to make Rhaenyra the next queen because he did not have a son at the time. And in order to keep the realm together, he needed to announce an heir. But he told her, I want Aegon to be king, my own flesh and blood. So you see that the High Order comes together at the table once again, and here sitting at the head of the table as of late is Allison, and they're discussing what to do upon the king's death. And of course she's here in despair, not really sure what's going on through her head, but I feel like if I had to guess, she's not really comfortable with Aegon being the king, but she knows she has to do what she can in order to keep the kingdom in her family and descendants of bloodline, because I think also she's afraid to have to go against Rhaenyra and her tricks. Politics and the backstabbing and conniving is not really her thing. And she's probably afraid of what Rhaenyra would be capable of if her father had died, or what she may have cooked up in the meantime. She's already built up a family of dangerous proportions with Daemon. Who knows what's coming? She has the right, and she's smart, to be afraid of Allison. So at the moment, everyone around the table is discussing about how they can usurp the king and find a way to get Aegon to take the throne. But of course the accountant disagrees, and he starts yelling out that it's treason and he didn't want this, and everyone's saying, please be careful what you're saying, you're out of line, like please. And he's just like, no, I'm not going to accept this. It's all types of tension on the table. So the first person to react would be Criston Cole, because he's raising his voice and yelling at the queen, and Criston does not like that as her personal guard, of course. And in that moment, he told him to sit down, and he grabbed him by the shoulders and tried to force him down into a seat. But it didn't work, and it ended up hitting his head on the orb that they're all holding as a part of the table, and it killed him instantly. And now he's at odds with the lead guardsman and the others, because they're all wondering, okay, this is too much, we should probably leave, this is not good. And as the tension is rising, they decide to just calm down and come together. At that moment, as things die down, they said, look, let's just talk about this and see what we're going to do. So they said they have to do what they can to make sure that those who are sworn to Rhaenyra as queen to be taken out, removed, and make them either swear their loyalty to the new king Aegon, her son, or death, just to make sure that Rhaenyra does not take the throne. They all know, everyone knows, that she is not fit to rule that kingdom or sit upon that throne. Now here's another thing that was interesting to me. Allison actually started to take charge, and once they started making decisions without her, she got frustrated and told them, we will not have this. If you say another word, I'm done with you. And you start to see a change in her character. She's usually passive and non-violent, but as she's been dealing with other things, behind closed doors, and having Lara Strong help her and taking out targets, she's becoming more accepting of getting her hands dirty in order to get what she wants. She's learning how to become a go-getter rather than just sitting back and letting things happen. So as things transpire, the lead guardsman, he just leaves. The head of the knights, he leaves. He said, I can't be a part of this. He takes his cloak off right then and there and just sets it on the table and walks out. Now Allison and her father goes to see one of her daughter, the one who's very prophetic and cryptic. Apparently she knows things that others do not, and she's doing a weaving so that what's it's a stitching. I'm not sure what this is. Forgive me for my ignorance, but she's stitching together a small little patch with a spider on it, and she told her, you need to be careful, there are spiders around and the webs are everywhere. And once she tried to like put her hand on it and try to console her, she hit her hand away. Strange. This is something that hasn't been explained yet, but I feel like it's going to be important in the future of the series. Her father, Otto Hightower, decides to go and talk with one of the guards and tell them to go on a secret mission to find Aegon, because apparently he's been missing for longer than usual and no one knows where he is, but he's usually known to come up missing, to be on his little escapades. And basically they say he frequents the bathhouses, the brothels and whatnot, and there's a need to go and find him, but no one knows where he is. This could be very dangerous, as to him being the heir. Someone could ransom him off, kill him, or have some type of way to pivot and leverage control over the kingdom. In the next scene, you see the handmaiden of the queen walking through the streets with soldiers, as all of the subjects of the kingdom are being woken up and funneled into a important place. But they don't tell you just yet. Right now, she reaches out to a guard and tries to get his attention as she walks, but the guard did not pay any attention to her. And someone was there. It was Larys Strong. And Larys thought that it was very suspicious of her. I'm not sure. Or maybe he's been having his eye on her. But I found it very important because early in the episode, once it was known that the king was dead, she lit a candle in the window. But the camera zoomed out as if this was a key moment. And I think that this was a key moment. I don't think that she was just lighting candles. I think that she was sending a signal to people who are the spiders that are paying attention to what's going on in the kingdom and trying their best to either topple the royal family or use the information to their advantage to keep power in the lower section. Now, Allison reports back to Kristen Cole, and she said that she needs his help to go and find Aegon, because without her knowledge, her father went to send the 2 guards to find him, but she's doing what she can to go find him as well. She's becoming more active in trying to do things. And here you see her other son, Aemon, decides to stand up and say, well, I'll go with him to help him find him. So here you have 2 parties of 2 searching for Aegon. And as they walk through the streets, Aemon and Kristen, they approach a brothel door and they say, this is where, Aemon said, this is where he took me when I turned, 16 or something or so. And here he is saying, well, I don't understand, what is this? And he said, well, this was a place where he taught me how to be a man, in more words or less. I can't say exactly what he said. But of course, the interesting thing is Kristen just countered with the words, women are the goddesses and images of our mother, and they should be revered as such. And he just did not let anything else slide with that conversation. So immediately you see that there's a disconnect and a disagreement between these 2 characters and where they align and how they view women in our society. The Hand of the King has gathered all of the houses that are available in the throne room and told them all to swear their loyalty and bend the knee to the new king Aegon. But some of them disagree. One in particular decided that he would go and discuss it with the people at home amongst his house before he makes a decision. But as he walks out, he's told that if you leave, you will not make it out alive. Either bend the knee or die. And he said, I do not break an oath, and I refuse to do so. So everyone else, after being threatened, some reluctant and others go ahead and bend the knee. So amongst the whole crowd, about 2 of them disagreed and said they would not. And of course they were taken immediately to be killed. At this moment, there's someone in the corner just looking upon and just observing everything. Of course, once again, it's Larys Strong. And he's seeing all the things that are taking place at this moment. I believe Larys is going to be something incredibly important very soon when it comes to everything becoming pivotal and things blowing up in everybody's faces. In the next scene, you see the 2 guardsmen walking the streets along with, without wearing their armor. They're in cloaks and normal clothes in order to disguise themselves, though they are a bit too clean shaven to really blend in, and everyone knows that they don't belong. They report to an underground fight that people gamble for entertainment between children that are between the ages of, say, it looks to be 5 and 8. And they sharpen their teeth and sharpen their claws so that they can fight each other and become more formidable. This is a vile act, but in terms of cinema, it's pretty cool. Also, another thing that's mentioned is that a lot of those children down there are completely blonde haired and just sitting there. There's one in particular, a small boy, just sitting in the corner wearing rags, and no one's paying any attention to them. And one of the guards said it must be one of Aegon's many children. And that puts into perspective just how reckless Aegon is with his addiction. He may have a sexual addiction. The next scene cuts to Sir Criston talking with Aemon, and Aemon expresses his frustration as he notices that Aegon is just having everything handed to him. He's never worked for anything. He's just been a screw up. He's been irresponsible, and just having the crown handed to him frustrates him because Aemon has studied, he's raised his intelligence, he's done backbreaking work, he's done what he could to master the blade. He has the biggest dragon in the world, and he's literally a self-made man and still does not have the throne. And it makes sense, and I kind of understand how he feels. In the next scene, back at the fights in the pits with the children, the two guards bump into a young lady who tells them that she can help them find Aegon's whereabouts, but they'd have to pay her. Of course, they follow her on her word, and she leads them to another place that can hopefully help them find what they're looking for. Now, at the time that this was going on, one of the people who swore their loyalty, one of the houses or representations, decided to get on horseback and try to run and leave the kingdom almost immediately, looking suspicious. They did not like this. So, he was carried away, and the hand asked him, "Where were you going in such a hastily manner?" And it looks like he was caught. And he was trying to go back and inform the kingdoms, and most likely inform Rhaenyra, that they were putting Aegon on the throne, which would jeopardize everything that they're working for right now. In the next scene, you see that the corpse of King Viserys is being prepped for burial, and they are taking the utmost care. And in the background, you see Queen Allison actually emotional. You can tell that she actually did care about him. She became attached and did love him, and now she's worried for the future. This is a behavior that I've never seen in Rhaenyra one bit, and it's her own father. I've never seen Rhaenyra actually care deeply about him, ever. And it really goes to show just how much of a higher caliber character and woman that she is. I do believe this wholeheartedly. In the next scene, it turns out that Rhaenys is visiting the kingdom, and she is woken up, but she sees the town stirring and things going crazy, but she's been locked in her quarters and not allowed to leave. Suddenly Allison shows up, and she's furious, like, why am I locked in here? What is going on? What is the purpose of all this? She said, of course things wouldn't have come to this if it not been incredibly important. So she informed her that the king had died that morning, and she told her straight up that you need to understand that Rhaenyra is probably going to be on a war path. She has taken everything from you. She's killed your children, cuckolded your sons, and done everything she could to tear your house down, and even taken the crown from you. You have to do something, and it doesn't matter. You could be the Lady of Driftmark. You can have Driftmark if you want. Your children and your sons should have this. Your descendants should have that. But you know more than anyone else that she is not in our favor, and you should be the queen. And it's the honest truth, and she knows it. She knows that Rhaenyra is conniving and evil, and this would be the best option for her. It really would. If Rhaenys does not align with Allison, she would literally be sending her family into the fire, throwing them to the dogs, and killing them herself. Rhaenys leaves her with the last few words saying that I start to see that you are more wise than I assumed, and I'm glad to see that, but it's a shame that you're still in service of the men around you, whether it's your late husband, your kids, or your father. Allison, in quiet, she just accepts the words, but you can tell it hit her in a certain way. She feels that she's being a good queen by being in service to people, but Rhaenys feels like she is a prison of the will of men. The two guards and the hand of the king report to where this young lady had led them with the money that was promised. She was brought to him, and another woman shows up. A woman that goes by the name of the White Worm. Now, apparently she runs things down there in the slums, and she has some type of, I guess you could say, royalty down there, because unlike everyone else there, she is clean cut and well kept, skin beautiful and hair nice, whereas everyone else down there is struggling, looking bad, dirty, or dusty. it's a very clear thing that her with her jewelry, she says she's set apart from everyone else and she doesn't belong. Immediately a level of respect is granted to her as they speak. And one of the things that they said that she wanted in return for Aegon's location was that she wanted to put an end to the children fights that the guards turn a blind eye to, because apparently the people who run those gamble houses with the children fights, they pay the guards to turn a blind eye. And I agree. It should be put to an end. That makes sense. So it seems that she's somewhat aligned to be a positive force who does evil or, infiltrate and, steal and buy information, etc., or kidnap, but she does it for good purpose. The guards find Aegon and he's incredibly reluctant to go back. He said he wants to be with his mother and he does not approve of them paying for the ransom. But of course they tackle him down and decide to bring him out, but they're interrupted by two people who are also looking for him. Criston Cole and his brother, and Aegon's brother, Aemond, show up at the steps. In this moment of distraction, Aegon breaks out into a run, starts a chase. Aemond catches Aegon and of course detains him, while Criston Cole has a sword fight with the two gentlemen of the Knights Guard. And surprisingly, not surprisingly, Criston Cole makes them into easy work and he beats them. Of course, him being an amazing swordsman, and he's shown this several times before in previous episodes. But he does not get lethal, and he asks them to stand down, takes his blade, and they leave. So the two guardsmen, they leave empty-handed, even though they're the ones who found him and paid for the ransom. It's incredible, actually. Aegon grabs his brother and asks him, Aemond, just one last agreement. If you can get me out of here freely, we can run, we can get away from here, and I could just leave. Just don't take me back. And Aemond just freezes, almost in disbelief. I think Aemond here is angry at the fact that you're given the throne, the crown, the Iron Throne of all the Seven Realms, and you're running away from it. Are you foolish? He detests this attitude and it's almost this childish attitude that Aegon has right now is making him envious and angry, because this is something that Aemond has always pined after, or at least dreamed about. In the next scene, Allison is having a discussion with her father about how she wants him to do things differently and how she can handle things or don't do things in this way. But he's trying to express to her that sometimes you have to do what you have to do, because your son could have been killed and they could have easily disrupted the power struggle of the crown. And we can't have that. There's 7 realms and many houses of people who depend upon this throne. We cannot lose that. But she, beckons to say that just because she's not willing to kill does not mean that it's a weakness, is what she's expressing. And basically she's saying there's always another way to do things. But I feel like this is her last shred of holding on to her morality before she really starts to play dirty. And he just lets her go along about it because he's never seen her stand up to him, in this fashion. And I agree, that actually works out. I like that. As she reports back to her quarters, Larys Strong is waiting for her. So Larys said, have you ever wondered how your father found Aegon first? In her response, she just immediately starts to take her shoes off and to show her feet to him. And his eyes were drawn to them and locked onto them as if he just couldn't look away. Almost in a very uncomfortable, creepy fashion. I'm not one to judge, but I wasn't completely comfortable with this scene because I'm not a fan of, certain things. But it's not my place to judge. But apparently this is what gets Larys going, and he loves to see it. And it's basically her payment for him being as such a good service in the shadows and commanding a group of people in service to her. So he brings to her attention that her handmaiden or lady in waiting is one of the little spiders in her kingdom leaking information, and it needs to be taken care of because there are spiders everywhere throughout. And she's saying, well, do you think you can handle that? If that is, services that I have access to. And he said, if you wish to, I can. And they say no more. And she shows herself as she turns away, and they finish their transaction. And now you have several shots showing Aegon back home, Rhaenyra still stuck in the kingdom, and many people just looming over the eventual anxiety of replacing the king. As they take us to a shot of Rhaenyra sitting in the room where she was staying as a guest, one of the guards of the elite knights decide to report and take her out of there immediately in order to get her on a boat and away from the kingdom safely under the shroud of night. Now, of course, this makes sense because her being there is a huge threat to not only the Valerian family because she needs to be at Driftmark, but she has to get out secretly or else they're probably going to stop her because they don't want her to leak the information that the king is dead. They don't want anyone outside of the kingdom to know. And apparently there's a fire in the slums at the house where the White Worm, where we first saw her. Now, apparently the White Worm was the woman that we saw last week. I was about to say yesterday. Last week, she was the person, the new character that we did not understand or know of. And now her house is being burned down by one of the clansmen who is under command by Larry Strong. As they're leaving, the sun's coming up and the bells are ringing and everyone in the entire kingdom is pushed toward the throne room to announce the next king being crowned. In the confusion, she's lost her guard, and Rhaenyra is now, along with the rest of the people, going toward this same place. Even though she's disguised as a civilian, no one's suspected her just yet. Aegon, of course, is still depressed and feeling all weird, and he's detached from the whole moment, and it's hard to really read him. We can't tell if he's grieving the loss of his father or if he's just being an asshole. So the dagger that the king used to carry everywhere, the Valyrian steel dagger, she gives this to Aegon, and by she I mean his mother, Allison, gives this to Aegon to basically make it official that he is the king now. And for some reason, he decides to ask her, "Do you love me?" And her response was just to call him an imbecile. And of course, it's understandable because he doesn't really know what expressed love is, I assume. We would have to look more detail into how he was raised and how he sees the world. But he's always been detached and he's just been addicted to sex with multiple partners, but never really emotionally there. He's never been emotionally sound, and it's strange. But the fact that he asked her this and her response makes sense as well, because she is saying, "I'm doing all this for you, doing everything I can. How can you question? Of course I do." So all of the townspeople gather and they announce that Viserys has died and that his final wish was that his firstborn son Aegon will become king. Everyone in the crowd responds with murmurs and whispers into a roaring applause. And the very next second, guards walk in to make a path and to present Aegon the king as horns blare and the queen waits. And in this scene, you see the most beautiful shot of Aegon walking down the aisle up toward the throne to be crowned. And it's actually an amazing piece of cinematic art. I love it. The angles, the music, everything. It's so great. Even the color grading and everything. It's so good. But let's not get into too much about it. They begin the ritual and begin to swear him as the king, while Rhaenyra, in secret amongst the civilians in her cloak, decides to run off and go somewhere we're unsure of right now. The ceremony continues, and all the townspeople and civilians look upon as Sir Criston was given the crown in order to place upon the head of Aegon Targaryen. As they announce, "All hail His Grace Aegon, protector of the realm and king of the 7 realms," everyone starts to cheer and clap. He looks around, he sees all the people looking at him and being happy about him rising to power, and suddenly his mood changes. He pulls the sword out of its sheath and he starts to just rally everyone. It's almost instantaneous how he turns around, and in that moment you could see by the second that he is becoming enamored by the power that was bestowed upon him. And then the very next moment, a dragon crashes in on everyone, destroys the place, and starts roaring. Tail whipping across the place, feet stomping, and everyone screaming and running. There's smoke everywhere, dust flying everywhere, hard to see. You can hardly even see the dragon itself, just silhouettes until it comes forward out of the sole light that's coming from the doorway. It's Rhaenyra Targaryen in her suit of armor riding her dragon. Now, Rhaenyra, of course, feels that she's been betrayed or lied to, but honestly, I don't think she wants Aegon on the throne, and she feels like it's a bad decision. So she brings the dragon closer and closer to Aegon, and it looks like she's about to tell it to Dracarys. But for some reason she doesn't, as Allison gets in front of her son and tries to protect him. I think in that moment, Rhaenyra understood she's a mother protecting her children just like anyone else. So she leaves, flies out of the big front door, and the credits roll. Now, personally, my opinion, I